Tobich, your host of Mustard Moments. Real people, real mustard, mustard moments. That's what we're all about here. This is Laurel Daley, someone who makes her very own mustard. So we have today a hard apple cider mustard that she's making, and we're going to compare it to a Dijon mustard. Laurel, tell me about your earliest mustard memory.
Well, Tim, I was thinking a little bit about this. I think the first time I really became aware of mustard was when I was a little kid, and my mom would make me lunch every morning. And traditionally, she would always put mayonnaise on my sandwich, and I've never been a big fan of mayonnaise. So I didn't want my mom to put mayonnaise on my sandwich because it was gross, but I didn't want my bread to be dry either. So she started putting mustard on my sandwiches, and then I realized that I love mustard.
And what kind of mustard was that?
Well, I think that it was just like yellow mustard at first, but I do remember us branching into like a Dijon. Like this is what we have right here to compare my mustard to is just like a Grey Poupon, and I remember that bottle being in my fridge.
Got it.
So yeah, I think from a really, really early age, I realized that I liked like not just the yellow mustards, but like the seedier mustards for a little texture, the spicy brown ones for a little more flavor.
Right.
Always loved a good honey mustard.
On that note, you mentioned your relative distaste for mayonnaise. Other condiments, how do you feel about ketchup? How do you feel about relish? How does mustard compare in your opinion?
I would say mustard is top tier.
Okay.
Like mayonnaise is like it's not even on the table. It's under the table. It's on the floor.
Fair statement.
It's
statement.
on the floor, and I'm kicking it away. And I don't want anything to do with it.
Okay.
Get it away. But yeah, mustard's way up here. I like ketchup. It's got a place, It's a good dipping option. There's something about mustard that's so much more complex and interesting, I think.
I totally agree. Before we try these mustards, tell me a little bit about what inspired hard apple cider mustard and what the process is to make a mustard from scratch, because not many people do that or know about it.
Sure. Well, I was excited about making some mustards from scratch when you told me about your mustard moment program. I wanted to make a hard apple cider mustard just because I'd never seen one before. So I started with mustard seeds, whole mustard seeds, yellow mustard seeds.
Yeah, and I've noticed this is like a very smooth mustard, so I'm personally really intrigued about the process with mustard textures and how you made this so smooth as opposed to like some of the more textured grainy mustards.
Sure. Well, I wanted to focus on the apple flavor. I wasn't necessarily going for like a lot of texture this time. So I started out you soak the mustard seeds.
Okay.
You kind of get them to like really like take in all the soaking liquid. So I soaked them in hard apple cider and apple cider vinegar for a couple of days, and what that does is it mellows out the mustard seeds.
I see.
Makes them expand, gives flavor to the liquid. Eventually, the liquid will mostly absorb into the mustard seeds.
And that's how you flavor the mustard. See, I didn't know this. I'm learning.
Yeah, like after the first day, they'll be like a little bit bitter, but that bitterness will smooth over the longer that you soak it for.
Okay.
So after it had soaked for a couple of days, I blended it and I tasted it, and I thought it wasn't quite appley enough.
And when you say blended, you mean you put it in a blender?
In a blender, yep, in a Vitamix.
And it just became this texture? Or that it's like that simple? You just soak and blend?
That's it.
Interesting.
It's really, really easy. So I thought in order to add a little more apple flavor into it, I took some of the cider, added some apple juice, I cut up some apples, and I threw a little bit of honey in there and threw it on the stove and boiled it for like about an hour until it like reduced into this really nice syrup.
I see.
And blended everything, including the apples, and then I added that back into the mustard.
So all of these mustards, the kind you made, the kinds people are most familiar with, start with essentially the same type of mustard seed. Is that accurate?
There's a couple of different seeds you can use. The yellow mustard seed is the most common. You can also find brown mustard seeds and...
Is that brown mustard is from brown mustard seed?
Correct.
Got it.
Correct.
So
Yellow
that's why
mustard
they're so different.
would be made from yellow mustard.
And if you're making just straight yellow mustard, do you soak in water or vinegar? Or vinegar?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
That's what gives it that tang.
And then if you're making a honey mustard, would you actually soak in honey, or would you add the honey later?
You add the honey later.
Okay.
Yeah, any of the
it's a little more
flavorings.
viscous, right?
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Interesting. So like a Dijon mustard, is that soaked in wine? Is that why we get the wine taste?
That's correct.
I
Yep.
see. I've learned so much already. So
Yeah.
on the right, we have the Dijon mustard that is not homemade, and we're going to compare it on the left to Laurel's hard apple cider mustard. So we're going to try the hard apple cider mustard. And when I smell it, to me, it smells like other mustards. But when I taste it, the apple really comes through. I don't know if you agree with me. Like, when you smell it, do you smell apple?
Not really.
That's very interesting because the apple is so present.
Yeah, I think that the scent of vinegar and mustard is it's a very like pungent, overwhelming smell. So the apple is a little more delicate,
And-
probably. That's why you can't smell it.
Is it right to say that no matter what with mustard, you're going to be using vinegar?
As far as I know.
As far as I know, too, right?
Yeah.
And yellow mustard is just straight vinegar.
Mm-hmm.
Brown mustard is just straight vinegar with a different seed.
Mm-hmm.
Gotcha. So we're gonna try the Dijon mustard now. There's an excellent like sweetness to the apple cider mustard. That's really fun because mustard is traditionally not what you think of as a sweet condiment, and it's a really nice juxtaposition built right in.
You know, there's not actually that much honey in there either. That's mostly from the
Just
from
the
the
apple.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's like a lot of people like to put on a hot dog mustard and relish, right?
Yeah.
Which is that savory and sweet. I don't know that you'd ever want to put relish with this mustard because it's kind of it's doing it all already.
Mm-hmm.
Now, when I smell this mustard, it doesn't even really smell like much of anything to me. So maybe my nose is just terrible. I don't know.
No, it doesn't have a very pungent odor at all.
But it's that classic Dijon taste.
Mm-hmm.
It's savory all the way. And I think I'm not making it up when I say Dijon mustard always is white wine.
I think that's what makes it
That's
a
what
Dijon.
I associate with Dijon mustard, but I'm not an expert. I just love mustard, so sometimes I get things wrong. But yeah, it really hits home and drives home the complexity of the mustard you made. Try it next to this. There's just more going on. It's like layered. It's almost like it's two condiments in one. Great.
Well, that kind of goes back to what I was talking about with I like there to be lots and lots of flavor in things.
Yeah.
You know, I'm all about like hitting all those different notes. You know? You got a little sweet in there, then you want to, balance it with a little tangy. You got a little salt.
Absolutely.
You want it to be a little sweet,
So, getting back to your history with mustard, we talked a bit about your earliest mustard memory, but what's the most unique mustard you've ever had, or the most unique situation you've found yourself in with mustard? Like, do you have a favorite mustard memory?
Gosh, and I wish I could remember the name of it. One of my very first jobs, I worked at a deli, and we made sandwiches. We had this mustard that was so good. It was a honey mustard, but now some honey mustards, like if you get a honey mustard at a restaurant, they add mayonnaise to it, which we've already covered that. I'm not a fan of.
Right.
But this didn't have that creaminess to it. It was just like really, really sharp mustard and whole seeds and lots of honey, and it was like smooth and spicy, and I was obsessed with it, and it was like everything I ate when I worked at that deli.
Was this in Massachusetts somewhere?
Yes, it was. I wish
Like
I'm
is
gonna
the
have
deli
to look
still
it up.
open? Can we track it down? We
is.
should have it on the show, this mustard. I have a friend who really dislikes mustard, and he actually told me the story once, and his dislike of mustard stems from being at a Major League Baseball game when he was a small child, and some stranger behind him thought he was really cute and asked his dad if he could buy him a hamburger, and his dad said sure, but the guy covered it in mustard, and my friend just felt obligated to eat it. It was drowning, and he was 5 years old, and felt very uncomfortable about the whole situation because the stranger was asking him if he liked the burger, and to this day, 30 years later, he can't eat mustard, and I feel like that's a big thing to miss out on. Mustard is a big part of life. It makes me sad for him.
Yeah, me too.
I don't know how you could dislike the stuff. I can see how you could dislike a type of mustard, Like maybe you don't like Dijon mustard, but there's so many other mustards. How can, just as a blanket statement, how is it that you dislike mustard? It's hard for me to imagine.
Me too. I mean, I don't get it, but there is sometimes like a bitter element to mustard, and it's very.
It's true.
It's
certainly strong.
It's quite a flavor, you know, that if you don't really like that flavor specifically, like that bitter, sour punch to your mouth, then you're not going to like mustard. So
one of the things that
I can see that.
Yeah, fascinates me about it is that it's like such a strong flavor, but it's also so complementary with so many foods. And I feel like usually a strong, dominating flavor on its own doesn't really work that way. Like ketchup to me is like a very strong flavor too, and I feel like it just makes everything taste like ketchup. And if you like ketchup, that's great. But like mustard, I feel like you combine it with things and you create all these new experiences. Sometimes it brings out other flavors. It's very interesting to me. It's a very mysterious and magical condiment. So.
It is. It reminds me of that scene in did you ever see Ratatouille?
I have seen Ratatouille.
You know the scene where the rat is trying to explain to his friends why he loves food so much, and he's like, you take this piece of bread and then you add some apple and a little bit of cheddar cheese and some mustard, and you eat the whole thing and close your eyes and tell me of all the flavors, all the layers of flavors that you taste, and that's why I love food.
Very well said.
I relate
That's
to that.
why we love mustard. So until next month on the 15th, this is Mustard Moments signing off. Thanks.
Thank you.
If you'd like.
Yeah, absolutely.
Be really careful not to topple our display here. I can always edit things out. That's the fun part of the video. So just smelling it.
Should we do that part over again?
Perhaps. That was exciting.